On this episode of Locked On Lightning, Cooch is on the verge of history. Stamkos continues to stay hot, and the Lightning pick it back up in Columbus. All that and more on Locked On Lightning.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to another episode of Locked On Lightning, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Adam Danker. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Locked On Lightning. Just a reminder, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel, make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Today, we're talking about that loss over the weekend. How can they pick it back up? Well, that's the best thing about hockey, is that you're able to just pick it back up right away. We talk about Steven Stamkos continuing to stay hot. How much longer can we expect this, especially with the playoffs just a couple of weeks away? And then we wrap things up with Nikita Kucherov on the verge of history of doing something that everybody else that has done it, including the other individual in the NHL that is going to accomplish this feat, are all future or are in the NHL Hall of Fame. So we talk about that as well. But go ahead, subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. We're also available on YouTube. So go ahead, subscribe to our channel there. Hit that notification button so as soon as the newest episode drops, you can be notified and you could watch and listen. So we're talking about that loss over the weekend, 5-4 loss to the Pittsburgh Penguins. A very disappointing loss, to say the least. A game in which really, and we've talked about this on the podcast in the past, and I've been saying it ever since the Lightning kind of turned it around in March, how I wasn't going to be upset about losses going forward. Now, if you're losing games like tonight, if the Lightning lose to the Blue Jackets, that's inexcusable. And one, maybe even the harsher Lightning fans could even say the loss over the weekend to the Penguins was inexcusable within itself as well. But my thing over the last month or so has really been, as long as the Lightning continue to play well, as long as they continue to show fight in their game, continue to show consistency and just, all around good efforts, you're going to get your losses here and there down the stretch. It's just one of those things. I mean, I even said it that I would be very shocked if the Lightning won out the rest of the season, something that I didn't think was impossible. But at the same time, it's very difficult. And I feel like, you're setting yourself up to get burnt out going to the playoffs if you were to do such a thing. But Lightning end up losing this one 5-4 in a game in which really they didn't start off particularly well. They go down right away, 1-0. And in that first period, they go into the third period down 4-1, and they score 3 unanswered goals to tie the game up. And really right there, that shows me that this team was fighting. They never gave up. They could have easily given up after the second goal was scored by Pittsburgh. I mean, the second goal of the period was scored in that second period. But no, they continued to fight. They continued to figure it out. And that's the thing about good teams, and even teams that are playing well, is that they may not consistently play well throughout the course of a game, but And we've spoken about this as well, is that, even though something has been working for the Lightning over the past month, you may not see it in full force in a game. And really what had happened, what you expect, at least from a team that has been playing well and that has a ton of confidence, is that you would expect at least the Lightning to come into that game and figure it out. If they don't have it right off the bat, which we saw on Saturday. And I would have been more upset, and I think a lot of Lightning fans would have been upset with if we were looking back on this game on Saturday and seeing that the Lightning lost this game 4-1, 5-1. But no, they came back from 3 down. Like I said, they battled. You got performances all around from your core guys, and that's really the guys. As much as you want to see the production spread out all over the team, the thing that you could always fall back on and say, well, at least we played well and something was working tonight, was the fact that, your usual suspects, as I always like to call them, we're producing tonight. We're on the stat sheet and we're providing results for you. And we'll talk about him in the second segment, but Steven Stamkos, just playing phenomenal as of late. 2 goals in this one, 35 and 36 of the season. Duclair scored another one in this one. I mean, he's got 22 on the season. Paul, his 23rd of the season. Really good to see not only Hedman getting involved in this one, obviously Kucherov playing well, and his handprints are all over this game. But also Mitchell Chaffee. I know it's only a secondary assist on the Paul goal, but even then, I mean, for him to get involved like that, I mean, it's not huge. It's not a life-changing thing for the Tampa Bay Lightning. It doesn't shift or force the needle in any kind of way. But like I said, and if you've been a listener of this podcast for quite some time, at least this season, one of the things I love to see is guys getting involved from the lower lines, especially the third and fourth lines, and all the defensive guys, and having Mitchell Chaffee be on the score sheet. That really is a good positive side, even in a game in where really the Lightning were kind of in it for the majority of the game. You probably didn't even think that going into the third, but they were in it, and they were able to figure it out, and they got production from even a guy like Mitchell Chaffee. Obviously, when you look at this game, the thing that really sticks out is the Penguins just really having their way in the faceoff circle. The Lightning were very subpar in this one, and that's really something that whenever I look at Lightning games and I always evaluate how they played, and obviously there's a story beyond the stat sheet, but if you always want to break it down by numbers and the Lightning do not play well or they lose a game, usually puck possession has a big part to do with that, and you saw that in this one. They were not able to gain control of that face-off circle. Other than that, I thought in other facets of the game, they played relatively well. 50% on the power play, that gets you far in the game. That was a big part as to why they were able to stay in this one. But other than that, just a disappointing loss. But you know what? It's not the end of the world, because they're back at it tonight against the Columbus Blue Jackets. And as we're recording this during the second period of tonight's game. So just taking a look, it is currently tied at 1. And we got goals from Braden Point, assist by Kucherov and Duclair. And then on the other side is Marchenko, his 22nd of the year. So we'll talk about that obviously tomorrow. I fully expect the Lightning to win this game. Like I said, when you're looking at the last couple of weeks of the season, as well as the Lightning have played, you're not expecting them to win out, but you're expecting them to win a bulk of those games. Now, if they maybe drop one more before the end of the season, that's fine, and I fully expect that to happen. But this is a game that definitely you should win. Collect the points. Right now, as it looks like, though, the Lightning aren't going to be able to catch. The Maple Leafs are going to have some help from them to drop some games before you get to that last game of the season. But right now, the Leafs look like they pretty much have that third spot in the Atlantic Division tied up. So let me know. I feel like this is going to be a week-to-week thing. Overall, I think we could all agree the Lightning are playing very good hockey. Like I said, you're going to drop one here and there as you close out the season, but you really, as long as you're winning consistently when the big ones count, and that is the Stanley Cup playoffs, that's all that matters. So let me know in the comments below. So coming up in just a little bit, we're going to talk about our friend Steven Stamkos, how he has really just continued to defy time and just at times logic with his performance. I'll talk about more about that coming up in just a little bit. But first, I want to talk about our first sponsor of today's show, and that is our friends over at FanDuel. Now, the sports calendar is loaded, and FanDuel is making it even more exciting to get in on the action because right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any $5 bet that wins. That's $200 you could use to bet MLB, NBA, NHL, and so much more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make your first bet a big one. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So as always, I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. If you haven't already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. We're also available on YouTube, so go ahead, subscribe to our channel there. Hit that notification button. Drop a thumbs up and a comment below. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know how you're feeling about this team because, like I said, it's going to be a week-to-week thing with this Tampa Bay Lightning team. Overall, I think we could all mutually agree that everything is looking good. Everybody's pointing in the right direction for the most part. There's going to be some hiccups here and there. That's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. But really, when I look at this Lightning team, and I haven't been able to say this maybe in a couple of years now because it's kind of been the Kucherov show and the Braden Point show and Brandon Hagel and, Mikey Esmont and Nick Paul, and the list goes on of guys that have really stepped up and really played well on this Lightning team. But the one name that I'm really glad to talk about them playing well and really looking like, I wouldn't say a resurgence because the numbers have always been there for the most part, but Steven Stamkos has played phenomenal really since the beginning of March. And I mean, you could probably even go back, but since March started, and that was 15 games ago, he's got 12 goals and 22 points. His shot percentage is 21.1%, which, if you don't know what that means, that's pretty dang good. And even if you want to go back 5 games for Stamkos, he has 7 goals. And how do we explain that? How do we explain that this guy even though he is in his early 30s, he still's got a lot of hockey to play. It's one of those things I think we could agree that I think if you asked all of us 5 years ago, with all the injuries, and even if you would have asked us in 2020, would we be seeing this performance out of Stamkos? I don't think so. I don't really think so. The way he has played this year at times has frustrated me, but really at the end of the day, the guy gets his numbers, and of course that benefits the team. The thing that has really impressed me about him mostly throughout this stretch of 15 games has really been the fact that, we've spoken about really in length this year about kind of his inability to kind of roll with the punches and maybe try scoring from here or, maybe do away with the one-timers as much. And he's done exactly that really over the last month. I'm not saying that he's gone completely away from that. That's probably the opposite. But the thing is that, he's not standing there like a statue on the left circle. He's not constantly just waiting there. The days, as we have announced in a ton here on the podcast, those days of just being able to stand there and just pick that top left corner are pretty much over in the NHL. And he is, for the most part, picking his spots. And I have to say, some players maybe on other teams, they may try to fight that change because that is something that has worked out for them their entire career, as it has for Steven Stamkos. And especially in the year where you've turned 33, you can't really teach an old dog new tricks, but he's figuring it out. And you kind of could see the wheels turning on every play and every game. And that's something that I think we have to all find very admirable. And I think that a lot of teams who might have to run into the Lightning down the stretch, and even, right now as it looks, it might very well be the Bruins. I'm sure that really kind of scares the crap out of them, because having him all over the ice, moving his feet instead of standing there, I think makes him so much more dangerous, so much more valuable to the Lightning's offensive attack. And when you're able to get this guy moving on different spots of the ice, whether it be the circle, whether it be the high slot, even down low, as we have seen him from time to time this year do, I mean, that is just a winning formula for this Lightning team. And it's something that I think we could agree is kind of acts as an ace in the hole for the Lightning, because, you know, when you can't go out there every night and just solely bank on seeing performances from Cooch or Point or Hagel or Paul. So to have a guy like that, especially because there are going to be times like that in the playoffs 100%, as was the case on Saturday against Pittsburgh, to have a guy like that could kind of take maybe 3-4 shots and give you a chance to stay in games and win, that's very valuable. You know, I don't think that Stamkos is make or break in terms of winning a series or winning a playoff game. No, I think he's more so now a supporting cast member, and I think that he has finally realized that in his career. And that was what was really so aggravating to start the year, and even to see last year, is that, I mean, I've never really looked at him and complained about the lack there of numbers, because really that hasn't been the case. It's just been so much more finding that dynamic in his game to where it doesn't slow everything down. And I think this year, if maybe even towards the end of last year, we've really started to see a shift in that and really start to kind of be open. I mean, it's one thing to say that you're open to a certain way of playing, but to really show it and act upon it consistently has really made not only a big difference for him in his numbers and his performance, but it's also really just helped this team, especially over the last month. And I think that really we can't place a value on how valuable that is for this Lightning team. Right now, as it stands, he's got 36 goals, 73 points. The plus minus is atrocious, but what are you going to do? I mean, it is what it is at this point. I'm not looking at him to try and figure out that plus minus. That's not something that really we want to look at. But obviously, the thing that has really impressed me this year, and he's creeping up on one of his career highs, which is very impressive considering the guy's been in the league 16 years, is the power play goals this year. So this year he's got 18. His career high is 24, one that he set back on 2009-2010 season, which he had 51 goals total. 24 of those were power play goals. That is something that he could very well eclipse before the season concludes. So that just shows you where he's at in terms of his performance. I mean, if you're replicating performances in, at age 33 and you're taking a page out of the book of performances that you had when you were 19, that shows you just the longevity of his game. So, kudos to Steven Stamkos. Hopefully we see more of this down the stretch and as the Lightning continue to march on to the Stanley Cup playoffs. So let me know in the comments below, how impressed are you by his recent stretch of games, his last 15? Are you maybe measuring your expectations? Do you think that's going to play a big role in the playoffs? Let me know in the comments below. So coming up in just a bit, we're going to wrap things up with some really perspective on how special this season that Nikita Kucherov has had. I mean, we already know how special his season has been. He could very well win the Hart Trophy, but he's approaching a statistic, a milestone, a season milestone, in which only 3 other players in history have approached before. So we'll talk about that coming up in just a little bit. But first, I want to talk about our last sponsor of today's show, and that is our friends over at the Sleeper app. Now, we are just a couple of weeks away from the end of the NHL season. The Lightning look like they're going to take the first wild card spot in the East and play the Bruins. But regardless of where they are in the current standings, I want to remind you that you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper. the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you could win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick guys like Steven Stamkos and Braden Point to record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minuses, or more in a given game. So use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. So one last time, I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. If you haven't already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. We're also available on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel there. Hit that notification button so as soon as the newest episode drops, you'll be notified. So just a little update for this game right now in case you're following along with the podcast. I mean, by the time you listen to this, you'll probably know the outcome of the game. But just to put in perspective, Columbus is now up 2-1 with 9.5 minutes left in the second period. Another goal by Kirill Marchenko. Assists go to Johnny Gaudreau and Zach Werenski. It's as long as Lightning, and I'm not watching this game right now. I'm going to watch it after it ends so I could just speed through all the dead plays and all that stuff. But it's not going to be a good look if they lose this game. That's all I'm going to say there. But let's focus on the positives, because if you're watching this on YouTube or if you've been a listener of the pod from some time, you can tell I'm starting to get a little upset about this. Losing to Pittsburgh is one thing, but losing to Blue Jackets, we can't have that. That's not something that is a good look for a team that is prepping for the playoffs. So we're talking about Nikita Kucherov, and there's been so much talk about Kuch this year, as that is something that really is warranted because he is having a phenomenal season. And we've talked about so much about him, how his performance this year has kept the Lightning afloat. I think it is not overstated enough how in the first 2 months of the season, until Vasilevsky came back, and even, you could even go farther into the season than that and still make the case that he has really been the one that has really steered the ship in the right direction and basically guided the Lightning to where they are now today. And if that still doesn't sway you in the direction of saying that he is not only the Art Ross Trophy winner, but also the Hart Trophy winner, then here's another stat or another, I guess, argument. Now, there's been 3 players in NHL history to record 100 or more assists in a single season. That has been Bobby Orr, Mario Lemieux, and Wayne Gretzky. And Connor McDavid is 1 point away from doing that as well. But so is Nikita Kucherov. And we've already spoken about in length also, if you want to add that to the I guess the stat sheet or the list of things that he has accomplished this year, Kuch has really accounted for half of the Lightning's points scored this year. And I don't know what more there needs to be said about it. I know there's a lot of talk with McKinnon about what he has accomplished, some of the things that he has done. But at the same time, when you're looking at what this guy, Nikita Kucherov, has done for the Tampa Bay Lightning this year, taking away the argument about where the Lightning could potentially have been if it weren't for him. But just to take the assist argument into that account, I mean, you're talking about 94 assists on the year. 94 coming tonight, of course, on the Braden Point goal. But, you know, talk about literally putting a team on your shoulders. And if anybody's, you know, if you don't believe me, if you're not a Lightning fan, you're listening or watching this, go ahead, go to NHL.com. Here's a little extras, even for if you are a Lightning fan, just to put in perspective, if you have this kind of time too as well. Go to NHL.com, go to the standings, and start from the first night of the season. And you could actually see the standings on a day-by-day basis and flip through it. And at the same time, in maybe another computer tab or whatever, go to each Lightning game, each one, and see how many goals and points Kucherov has had in each game and see what the outcomes of those games were. Okay? It's very lopsided. You know, maybe I'm being biased, but you look at other seasons, and not counting this one, but the Lemieux seasons, the Gretzky seasons, especially those two seasons, any one of those seasons, even Gretzky, just in general. I mean, we haven't seen this level of literally carrying your team an entire season probably since Gretzky. I mean, one can make the argument for McDavid in the shortened season when he had 100 points, or any McDavid season, but I think we could agree McDavid's probably cut out of the argument for the Hart Trophy, even though he's actually in it. He's in it because of the points, but he's not in it because he missed some time. But I mean, I know I said on the last episode that we weren't going to talk about this anymore. But I mean, how many more points, how many more things does this guy have to accomplish on a nightly basis, and how many more milestones does he need to approach of historical significance for everybody to be in agreement? And yes, I am talking to Canadian fans, not of the team, but people that reside in Canada and are biased towards Tampa Bay Lightning. So let me know in the comments below. I mean, what else is it going to take for Nikita Kucherov to win over the hearts of other hockey fans? So let me know in the comments below, and we'll stay tuned for hopefully, to talk about a Lightning win tonight, as like I said, they are down 2-1 to the Columbus Blue Jackets. So we'll be back tomorrow, and stick around for that. So in the meantime, that's been it for this episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. I'll talk to you in the next one.